is a gorgeous day here in Seattle. I hope you're having some beautiful weather where you're at. And I am really excited to continue this series, What Your Worship Leader Wished You Knew. If you're joining us live, just go ahead and comment anytime. We'll take some questions at the end. And now let me tell you what we're talking about today. I recently did a survey of worship pastors that I know and, personally and through Facebook and through work I've done with different churches, and asked a good group of them if they had one wish that through all of this extra time we've had at home alone, if we could learn one thing, what would be their number one thing that they wanted their worship singers to know or to learn or to get better at, wherever you lay in that whole kind of line. And they gave me their list. I started episode 1 with the very first top of their list. And everything else that I'm doing in this series is based off of episode 1. So if you haven't seen that, please go back and see that. And today we are going to talk about the third. So I'm kind of taking them in a row here. And we talked about yesterday, we talked about all sorts of vocal things that are going to come into play today too. So also, if you haven't watched episode 1 and 2, then it'll help you clue in to what we're talking about today. And today is something I call freedom. Now, I tend to call things different things, but to most people, and the way it was said on the survey, today is really about our public worship. We talked about our naked worship already. Today is about what it means when we take our naked worship and we dress it up and take it to church. I am going to share with you today what I have shared with very, very few people outside of private students that I work with. I'm going to share with you my biggest vocal fail ever. And it was a biggie. And it really led to me completely thinking of worship completely differently. I'm hoping that it will maybe challenge the way you think about public worship too. And I really think that it'll lead to some success for you because I've got some action tips, 6 practical tips to make your worship come alive in our vocal quick win tip today. All right. At the end, I'm going to tell you exactly what worship leaders said about this topic. So if you want to know, what did they say about me? I've got that too. I'm Kim Snyder, professional singer, master vocal coach, and creator of the Voice Club Method.com, thevoiceclub.com, and the voice. Okay, you get it. I do what really nobody else does. Most coaches and teaching singers don't know how to do it, and the rest don't want you to know. And that is how to master your own voice, be in control of it, actually know how you did it. We deserve to know that, just like we can pick one of a million diets. We should know what our voice needs. Okay, if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, go ahead and do that if you would, because if you click the bell, it'll notify you when all the new episodes post. When we have a live episode, it's live, and then about 24 to 48 hours edited rebroadcast will post. So you can see them later, but if you want to see the entire thing, questions and answers and all of that, that will have to be live. So click that bell. Now, it's really common, and I've been in lots of worship teams. I'm not going to go through my history. I talked about that in the other episodes, but I've been in a lot of worship teams and leadership and just being the new chick, just trying to find a place on any team. And I found through those experiences, along with my work as a professional singer for 20 some odd years, that the only thing we really need to be really happy as a singer, really confident as a person, and an effective lead worshiper. That means anybody on the stage that opens their mouth is a lead worshiper. The only things that we need to do those, none of them rely on another person. That means it's not relying on a really strong worship leader. Sorry, worship leaders. It's not relying on a great band. And I'm going to go through that today, what that means and how you put that into practice, how you move forward with some of these things. You think, well, I'm guessing you think, because I have been here and I know a lot of worship singers that have said they've been there. If I just was on a better team, if we just had a better band, if we just had better singers, we just had a leader that was blah, 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 right? We think if we just had that, then our public worship would be super, super great. But I'm going to show you today how it depends on nothing else but what you do. And I'm going to give you 6 steps to start putting it into practice. In episode 1, which is where we talked about naked worship, we talked about what determines both what you will be able to bring to your church or not as an individual. And we talked about in episode 2, your personal success, really confidence on the platform. So those were the things we covered in the first 2. And now we're going to move that personal confidence and personal impact into the church and talk about Well, last episode we talked about at the end bringing the offering. We leave it at the edge of the stage and we say, God, all my job is now is to walk the offering on stage. Today we're going to talk about what is in the offering. Now, here's my embarrassing story. I was gigging. I made a full-time living for my voice since the time I was 16 until my horrible, unexpected medical event 10 years ago. And so along that time, I was gigging. And a lot of times when I wasn't in the studio, I would do a lot of fill-in for big event bands, corporate bands, and, convention center balls and galas and stuff. I got to wear fancy dresses. It was so cool. Just the dresses, girls, But I would go out, and every weekend I was gigging, sometimes 2-3 nights in a row. So it was really common for me to be out till 4 a.m. by the time I got home from a gig, and then get up at 6 a.m. to go for rehearsal before the first service of 3 at church. And I had been doing this for a long, I don't know how long I'd been doing this, but I was really tired. I came to church and I remember thinking we were warming up for worship. It was we're running through the set, right? And we're running it through, and I'm just thinking, man, I'm so glad I'm at church with all my people, because I can just let my hair down here. I don't have to worry that I haven't learned the songs. I'll just pull the words up. I mean, if I don't know the words, I'll lip sync. I know how to do that. I don't even have to really put any effort in because it's church. And about the time I ended that thought, God went, excuse me. So you mean to tell me that you will take this time during the week to learn 40 songs, style it all, prepare all the maps for all the songs, show up, do this whole big thing, and you can't be bothered to learn a few words at a time? Is that what you're wrapping up in that offering for me? Now, if he said it to you, he would have said it in different words, but when God talks to me, he knows I get sarcasm. So it was a real personal, deep moment where God just went right here and said, look what your offering is to everybody else for a little bit of pocket change. And then this is what you're telling me you're comfortable with to bring on to the offering, the altar to the offering for me. And I thought, you know what? You're absolutely right. And then I started looking into, I've been in church my whole life, like a lot of you. Offering, altar. Yeah, I've heard that in a million sermons. But I was really driven back to the Old Testament when they talk about the lamb. They would prepare the lamb as the sacrifice. They'd take it to the temple. And the fact that, yeah, I've heard that a million times, but what they did is they would raise a lamb. When all the little lamblings, no, that's not a real word, were born, they would choose a specific lamb. They would pick the best one. And then they would love it and care for it and do all these special things to fatten it up and make it really beautiful. They would take years sometimes to just grow the right kind of lamb, and they would breed their stock so they could have a lamb for next time. And then when it was time to go to temple to take their offering, it was a huge family event. It was a celebration. They would take this beautiful lamb that they'd prepared, and they would take a journey to the altar where they would see all of the other people that were fellowshipping as well, bringing their offerings. And that was a picture that stuck in my head about what we bring as singers when we go from last episode, taking that purposeful step onto the platform, to laying down our offering, our public act of worship. And I thought about what I've experienced through so many worship teams. Most of you have been on several worship teams too. And if you haven't, this is the generalization. I know that I thought of my offering. It is my offering. It's my time, right? I scheduled it on my calendar. I listened to the MP3s. I went to a rehearsal. Come on. I showed up early. I got up early to go to Sunday run through, right? And then I took my effort to read the words off of the monitor. That took my attention. But the thing that really cinched the whole thing for me is when I was up there worshiping, I was not thinking about God, which is what you do. You bring your offering to God, you lay it down on the altar. I was thinking about me. Not, oh, look at me, but am I going to hit that note? Am I going to do this? Is that going to sound awful? And all of those distractions kept my focus on me instead of the purpose that I was there for. And then, of course, I'd throw in a prayer at the end. Oh, God, please let this minister to other people. So I thought if my worship in the past were a lamb, it might be like one of those genetically engineered just mistakes. It would be yuck. It'd be not the kind of lamb I want to bring. I think through my experience, both as a professional singer, a worship leader, a worship team member, and training other worship singers, I think that we tend to lack in our public offering, our public worship, for one of two reasons. One is that, and this is a lot of times, we just don't know how. We want to. We just don't know how to practically put that in place. Well, how do I take what we talked about in naked worship, build my confidence like we did in episode 2, and then put it on the stage? We can want to, but unless we know how to put that in action, it kind of stays there. The other reason I've seen is because there is no naked worship. And naked worship is where it all starts. Without that, you don't go nowhere. That's why I'm going to give you those 6 steps later on so that you can put some things in action. I want to let you know that your turn is coming, worship singers. This is what worship leaders wanted you to know. But on the last episode, I'm going to tell worship leaders what you wish they knew. So leave that in the comments so I know what to tell them. I'd appreciate it. Post them now. Okay? We talked about in episode 2 being prepared. And this takes up where we left off on that. There are 5 parts of real prep. We think about learning the words, the music, showing up, and that is just the first couple steps of the 5. If you haven't heard those, please go back and watch those. It'll be really helpful, I think. But now we're going to move on from those 5, and we're going to say, what does biblical worship, bringing the lamb to the altar, look like in a current contemporary setting in our worship teams? Preparation, we talked about last week, the steps of preparation. That is our choosing the lamb. The way we prepare for each song, each Sunday, or each time that you're on a service, whenever that is our lamb. We decide how much time and attention we're going to put into that lamb and how we're going to dress it up and what we're going to do and how we're going to make it beautiful for our offering. Our rehearsal, which I used to think was just the offering. My time is my offering, my time and my talents, they would say in the annual volunteer speech sermon. The rehearsal is really the beginning of the altar. It's when everybody brings their offering. The guitarists have been, their lamb is their guitar work. The drummers, the keyboardists, that's their lamb. We spend time on our individual lambs and then we gather together at rehearsal. Rehearsal is not the time. If there's one thing I could tell new singers that have never been in a worship team before, although they probably won't believe it once they're on a worship team for a while, you know what I mean. I would tell them that rehearsal is not the time to pick out a lamb. It's too late. You're at the altar at that point. We're all meeting at the altar grounds, and then the service is when we lay our offering on the altar. So if we can think about it that way, I think maybe it clicks a little bit more, I hope, for you. But how do we raise a great lamb? This brings us to our vocal quick win tip. All right, 6. I've got 7 for you. 7-step action plans. There's 7 things in a row that you can do that will raise a great lamb. And you can know that your naked worship and your confidence are resulting in this offering that is worthy of the audience that you have. And I don't mean the people in the seats. I mean the audience of one. So here's step number 1. Print the lyrics. It doesn't matter if they eventually deliver lyrics in a cloud and they zoom up in front of our face on the sky. There is a good reason to print the lyrics. I always have my singers print double-spaced at least because of the next steps. We're going to need room to prepare the lamb. If all you're going to do is show up and snag a lamb that was in the parking lot and say, just pretend you know me, you don't need to print your lyrics. But if you're going to raise a lamb and take pride in it, you need to print the lyrics, and I'll tell you why. The second step is to read, not sing. Read the story of the song. I'm going to go back to Amazing Grace because I did look through some lyrics for some more contemporary songs, and I'll just be honest, I found them a little lacking. I found them lacking of a story. And if you go through what we talked about earlier in singing the story, which I'm going to detail much more for you, you'll realize that without taking some songwriter's story and finding your own experience within that, and I don't mean experientially, I mean the time in your personal meetups with God that something happened that song reminds you of. If the song doesn't talk about anything that we can pull from, that makes it very difficult. So I'm going to give you a good song example, and then I'm going to give you a really poor example that we're probably all singing right now. Okay. And I'm going to tell you how to do it in both, but why the content of the songs we choose is so essential to the quality of the lamb that we can bring to our altar, which is our stage for our church. When we read the story of a song, this allows us to find our personal connection, like we talked about before. I told you to find your personal connection to when God has moved or you've seen him move in other people's lives that song reminds you of. You can only do that if it reminds you of something, and you can only do that if you have naked worship. But let's take a song like Amazing Grace. I think the best song ever. Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. There's a word we don't use. If I were to put it in contemporary language, I would say, Amazing Grace, oh, so sweet. Saved an idiot like me. I once was so clueless, but God could see through it. I was so going to be lost forever, but he brought me in. He held me close and he saved me forever. That's amazing grace to me. When we read the story of the song, we're not reading the lyrics. We're saying, what are they saying? What is the story? What are they saying? Once we take Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound, and I already put it in what I would say is contemporary language, I can think of a ton of times when that kind of feeling, I'm such an idiot, God, I don't know why you bother. I can think of a lot of times that's happened. But when I look at what somebody else wrote as their story in their own language at their own time, which is why you get the older English, we connect to it by saying, what were they saying? What was their story about? And then we say, have I ever felt that way? Have I ever watched God do this in somebody else's life? Maybe somebody you know just came to know God personally. And you're like, that just reawakened my faith in such a great way. That might be the picture you have. This is why we can sing a song over and over and over and always have a fresh take on it, because as we walk in naked worship, there is so much more to pull from. Not just, oh, God saved me once when I was 5. It's not that. It's so many different times. So Amazing Grace, we can all pick stuff from that. Read the stories, number 2. Now, God will show you how you deeply connect to that story. So not what somebody else's story was, but what your connection, what makes you feel those words. There's a personal experience with God in your naked worship that causes it. Then you go to step 3, and you're going to write some reminder words. And this is why you have to have it printed out. You're going to say these words over here, the couple lines there reminds me of. Now, I like to have the little side when you print out the lyrics in a map, as we talked about in the last episode. I have room over on the right and left, but I like to put my reminder words of like that time in 2018 when I was on vacation. Whatever it is, you don't have to put all your private stuff on. You just want a couple words that key you into your point in the story, your connection to somebody else's story. So that when you're rehearsing and going through all that, when you find yourself becoming robotic, which is our habit. So if you don't do that, that's great. But if you do that, I want you to know you're in the mass of worship singers, because we're not quite sure what else to do. And we're just trying to tick off boxes like we talked about in the last episode. So if you don't have those things written down, it's hard to bring them back because you've gotten into your old mode. But if you have those little keywords written down at certain parts of the song and you're like, God, I really want to honor, I want to bring a great lamb here. I'm trying to remember. All you have to do is just peek over there and God will bring it all back for you. Writing it down is really important. When we write it down, even if we never look at it, it helps to seal it in our brain's database. So we think about it, we write it down, we look at it. That's 3 ways to make sure that it stays there and that we recall it regardless of our habits. The next step is to learn. All right, now we move on to music. We've printed the lyrics, we've read this story, we've found our own connection to that story, and we've made some little notes so that we don't lose that. We never want to lose the connection, or it's not connectable. Then we learn. We don't learn what's on the MP3. I think I'm the only one I've ever heard say this. Don't learn what's on the MP3. What's on the MP3 is not only somebody else's story, but it is a song that was put in a key for a specific singer, and that song was arranged around that specific singer's weaknesses, which we all have, and strengths, and their styling stuff that they do comfortably, right? That song is not produced for everybody else to copy. That's just not the way records are made. So let yourself off the hook there, but we want to bring something unique to it. We don't want to try to make a print if we had a 3D printer, we're going to print out what somebody else's lamb looks like. That's what it's like to copy an MP3. It's kind of sterile, might look the same, but it's not really real. We don't want to copy somebody else's stuff. Every singer is an artist. Every voice is incredibly unique. No other instrument is like it. You can have, thousands of guys playing the same instrument, thousands of ladies playing the same instrument all around the world, but nobody has your voice. Nobody. Absolutely unique. Refer back to what I told you about your thumbnail and your vocal cords in the last episode. So when we go to learn, whether it's your harmony or melody, so it is regardless. Everybody brings an offering. Everybody that's up there has an offering to bring or is stuck up there without one. So if you're going to bring one, you want to learn the core part. That's you're responsible for. Let's say that let's just go with Amazing Grace. And you've never sung Amazing Grace because you've come to the Lord later in life and you've just never heard the old stuff, right? And so you want to listen to where the melody is going so you get an idea of it. I teach a method to my Academy students it's a specific vocal charting method just for singers, because a lot of mass churches, big churches, will rely on a national numbering system. You guys don't care about this unless you're musicians, but that is not suited for singers. I know a lot of people chart from that for singers because you don't need to learn to read music anymore. I mean, it's not essential unless your church requires it for something. In general, it's not a thing you have to do to be able to worship. But I copied off some other things that are musician based and customized them for what singers need. And the reason I did that is for this. When we learn the core melody, we don't want to listen so long that we fall into the trap of copying somebody else's story. That means that how they hold a note, how big they get, when they do, what little trills they add and stuff. Now, your worship leader may want you to replicate the arrangement of that. That's fine. But I do a numbers charting system, so we can actually chart the trills he wants you to learn or the harmonies. If you're having a hard time, you find them and you write them down. The reason we want to chart it, and if you don't know how to chart it, which I'm not telling you how, so you won't, the best thing I can tell you is to only learn your part till you're pretty sure, like 70% sure you know it. That's it. Then shut the MP3 off. Because if you continue and if you keep it loud, your brain learns that this is the goal. I have to copy this or I'm not good. So we can't copy it because we have unique vocal cords. So when we can't, or we're a poor copy of it, even at our best, then it leads to that sense of being really unconfident on the platform. But when we learn a core part, Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound, da 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 da, and I'm like, I only know a few of those notes. That's okay. Because then at that point, when you have the core part, it's enough. So you don't want to start copying things. Then we move on to the next step. We talked about this a little bit last episode, mapping the song. What is mapping the song? It is for the musicians, it's verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, tag. It's the order of which you're going to do the different parts of the song. That's all it is. It's making yourself a map. So that, and I like to write like verse, chorus, so that I know where to go and have it all on one sheet. I don't ever take paper to a service, but at rehearsal, I always have paper with me. A lot of times no one else does. I don't care. I'm responsible for my own lamb. You know what I mean? That's what we are. So I bring my paper with me because I have my note chart. So like I just sang Amazing Grace wrong. I would go back and check that in one of these following steps and I would chart it. So I would know that that's where I tend to mess up so that I know when I'm in rehearsal that I've got to, like we talked about last episode, I've got to fix for what probably will be my fail. I already have it on the paper and I can test it out in rehearsal. So when we go to map the song, map your part. However, this is a beautiful thing. You don't have to know anything about music, time signatures, anything. All you have to do when you double space your words, all you have to do is learn the core part and of your part, whether it's a harmony or melody or whatever. Then when you go look at the song and you're reading through the order of the elements, say, where do I tend to make mistakes? And in those places, make a symbol for yourself. Sometimes before I developed the singer's charting system, I would just, like if I tended to go, Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound, instead of how sweet the sound, And then I went, oh man, for some reason, it seems old fashioned. I don't want to go down there. On sound, on the words, I would put a down arrow. That lets me know I tend to not go. I need to go one down more, or I need to go down from where I think it is. Just that little symbol corrects so much stuff. So when you have your stuff written out in order, you start singing through the song and you kind of know where you're going to fail. You'll find your fails. Step 6 is to sing the song, but not like we're used to doing it. And this has to do with my study of how the brain brings in information, our neurology, as seen through our anatomy. So when we sing through the song, and I teach a lot of people harmony that have most people aren't grown up, raised to learn harmony anymore. So if you do, I want you to know that is a gem in your toolbox of styling tools. And whether you need to gain control of it or not, like we talked about last episode, it is a jewel. It is beyond a tool. It is a jewel. It's a diamond. So you just need to know when to bring it out and how to let it shine. That's all. Don't let anybody tell you that, harmony's so out. It drives me crazy. I want to put a third and a fourth and a fifth part in there all the time. And like, no, we only have room for 2. But I'm old. So that happens. When we go and sing through the song, try doing it this way. Take the music that you're listening to. And remember, I just told you, I don't want you to listen to it too much or you'll start 3D printing somebody else's lamb and not bringing your own. So we keep the music at about 20%. If you think about where you usually put it volume-wise, crank it all the way down to what 20% of that is. You will barely hear it over your own voice. That's the goal. Because you want to tell your brain that when you sing what you're singing, now that you've mapped it out and you've made notes on your part, how you're going to sing it, and you go from that. Now with the music in the background, you take it for a test run. And the reason the music is there is to show you other mistakes that you're making. Not to listen to how they did it or, I just need to sound exactly like that or how did they do that and I'm no good. It's just in the background. When our voice is considerably louder than the music that we're listening to, the brain will catalog that information differently. If the music is louder than your voice, the brain will catalog that is the goal. And you cannot reach that goal. You have a unique voice. Even if you're great, you can sound good in it. You can sound fabulous in it, but you cannot sound exactly like that other person. And being a second grade copy of anyone else is not fulfilling. So why go? But once you have your own part, you start singing through it. It allows your brain to focus on your voice as being the goal. And that's what you want, because then it will remind you of what your part is and what you're supposed to do. It will draw you back to that harmony quicker than it will otherwise. Also in the singing stage, this is when you focus on your story. When that music is on, you're going to sing through it. You're going to be tempted to just be thinking about, I don't like this, I don't like that. Did I do this wrong? I got to go pick this apart. It's not time yet. It's not time. So you go through that, and as you're singing the melody, you're focusing on your story. I think we're all visual learners at this point with media. I like to think and recreate the scenes of those things, and that's why I put those memory words on the side. It brings those mental pictures back to me. And when we have a mental picture of something that we felt emotionally, guess what it does? Whether you hit a note or not, it shows up on your face. And the face, not the voice, is what really communicates to people. It's what connects our story to the people in the seats. It's what allows our offering to God to be a wow moment for somebody else's walk with God. That's so crazy that God would let us do that. Let us be a part of that. Just think it is. So the next step and the last step, if we've gone through all these other things, we've got an overall idea of what we're doing, then we have to find our story, or we have no offering. We go up there empty-handed. Then we learn the necessary notes and where we're going and how it repeats and junk. Then we sing through our story, and we want to get locked into the fact that our voice is the primary thing we want our brain to bring back to us. Whether you like it or not, trust me, your part is what you wanted to bring back, not what's on the record, because the band won't even play the same as they do in the recording. All the parts aren't usually filled out. In the studio, we take, if you have a 5-piece band, which in the studio we have a lot more than that, we will double, triple, quadruple all those tracks. That's why it sounds so full. No live worship band, unless you have about 20 people in your worship band, can replicate that sound. So don't feel bad. You're not the only one. In the last step, it is improve. This is where you get to get nitpicky. Singers, because our instrument is part of our physical body, and singing is such a part of our soul, it was created to be that way. Improving, what we find to improve becomes really overwhelming very fast, regardless of where you think you are talent-wise. That's a whole nother thing I think we talked about last episode. In the improve step, as you've been singing your story through and the music's been in the background, you've noticed some places you've not sung right, but you've been focusing on your story, not on those parts. So we want to get our story locked in. Our brain says, my voice is the part I need to focus on. This helps you to not get locked into other people's parts, especially if they go off from their part, sometimes to other good things, sometimes to bad things. But either way, it'll tell your brain, don't get off track, pay attention to my voice. And the reason we want to sing our story first when it comes to neurology is because it locks in what you're going to do with the rest of your body and your brain while the voice is singing this. It's going to put your mind back to that visual representation that you wrote down those words for. It's going to allow you to not just grab the lamb by the leg and show the foot, the hoof, I guess it's a hoof, up on the altar, but to carry gently the entire lamb at once. Your brain can do that for you. We just have to give it the information in the right order so that it prioritizes it in our database. When you go to improve things, now you've sung through the story, you've sung all kinds of, now maybe you run through it one time. And here's what you get to do. You get to pick out 2 things max that you liked the least. We don't hate anything about our voice. Our voice is created to do incredible things. The only things that come out that we hate are because the poor voice is not allowed to do what it can. So you can't be hating on your voice. It's you. It's part of you. Don't hate on it. Don't do it. Pick 1 to 2 things max and say, man, I got to get that bridge stronger. Or man, I made a note. I got to go up on that note, but I'm not getting there. I got to do something about that. So once we get to the improve point, we're talking about you've got your bass melody or harmony down. 90%, right? As you're singing through and worshiping, those notes are going to come automatically from the little you've heard the MP3, because you've probably heard it in church a million times too. It's kind of in your database already. When you work on the 1 to 2 things, then you take those apart in pieces. Don't run the song over and over and over and over. What will happen is you'll find more and more and more mistakes, because it is practically impossible for any singer to sing a full take of any song without making mistakes, without doing something they didn't plan to do, or something that was ugly, or something they're embarrassed of. If we run a song over and over and over, waiting for the perfect take, it will never come. It is not possible. So save the wear and tear on your voice, and save your energy, and save your time by just say, where is it? I'm going to make a circle. I usually circle the parts I struggle with, or sometimes words. I'll say the wrong words from the wrong chorus if they have several choruses, and I will circle them. Then when I visually look at that, from my personal time rehearsing till we all come together, it's just all I have to do is visually pass through that sheet. My eyes know that's if I feel like I'm getting unplugged from public worship, look at those little memory words that I put there. If I'm not sure what word's coming up, I've got it circled. My eye will go right to it. I'm kind of a prep fanatic because of the amount of songs I had to learn at once. I will write my songs out. I will pre-paste them all. I do verses in regular font, double-spaced. My choruses are always in bold, and my bridges are always in italics. And if I have time, I've color-coded. And then I'll use colored pencils, because I've got a visual system. I don't have to spend hardly any time. I just have to make notes. And then when I go practice, your brain just sucks it up so fast. So even though I'm getting older, my brain is slowing down. Mainly my brain slowed down because of the brain damage I had after septic shock. But after that, I forgot how to harmonize. That's how I knew my brain was really damaged. Well, I couldn't think for a while. Once I started thinking, I realized I couldn't harmonize. So as my brain heals now, I'm starting to I've been harmonizing since I was 4, and it's starting to come back. So if you'll do those things, it'll be really helpful. I'm going to go through them again. Print the lyrics. Read the story. Read it like a book. Put it in contemporary language. Say, how do I connect to that? Then write the reminder words somewhere on your lyrics in the same place, so that you can, in the chorus, it reminds me of this, and that second verse reminds me of that. And it was really powerful. The most powerful thing that God reveals to you in your naked worship time. Then learn your core melody or harmony. Learn 70 to 90% of it you feel comfortable with. Not all of it. You don't have to memorize it all. Then you figure out the order of the song so that you know how to follow it along. And your part, you make notes of anything that, those other 10 to 30% of things you're not sure about. You map those to. Then you sing through it for the story, keeping the music really low so your brain attaches to your voice. And your brain also says that when it hears your voice, it attaches to the story. We have to rehearse with the story, number one. Number two, when your worship leader will tell you when you're at home, go through your songs in worship while you sing them. I think that's a great idea, but I really struggled for years figuring out how to practically do that. So I'm hoping this will put that in a practical way for you when you do, especially step number 6, when you sing just for your story, connected to your words that you've written. And the last step is to improve the 1 to 2 things that bug you the most. Did you know that, what do we have, like 6, 8 songs on a set list? If you'll do this for every song, and we repeat songs over and over. So let's say you haven't sung Waymaker for 12 weeks, but you're on team and it's back again. When you run it, guess what you get to do? You get to pick the next 1 or 2 things to improve on. So over time, you're constantly improving. When we improve 1 or 2 things at a time, we get to see our success. If we look at a list of unending problems, which happens when we sing the song all the way through over and over and over and over and over, it is unattainable. And then it becomes this big weight around our neck that we're never going to be good enough. And it's simply not true. It's just the way we've been approaching it. Okay, I hope those 6 tips really help you. It is not, like I said, the notes. It's not the notes that connect. Do we want to sing on pitch? Absolutely. A lot of people ask me about, well, I can't be a good singer because I go flat or I go sharp. I'm going to tell you something that I learned through my very unusual vocal education. Pitch is not something that needs tone training. That's what people do for it because I think they don't know what else to do. Pitch is the result of taking the wrenches out of your vocal machine. When we take the wrenches that have been thrown in by the wrong information, well-meaning, and maybe sometime at some point in the past, all the information they had, when that is thrown into what we now know about how the voice is supposed to run, and by we, I mean the medical community, the high-end, like vocal surgeons don't even know a lot of the stuff. You have to go to the vocal surgeons who specialize with professional singers before you even find somebody that even knows this stuff. This is why this is so stupid crazy to me, because singers should know this stuff. But it is the wrenches that go into the machine, like we talked about the engine. If you throw a bunch of wrenches in your engine, it's going to throw it off balance. Your whole car is going to be off balance. And that's exactly what happens to our notes. We go pitchy. We go pitchy because how we approach notes. We approach notes wrong because the engine isn't being allowed to do what it needs to do. It's not being allowed to run. It's trying to run around all the stuff we've thrown into it. Pitch is a result of that. Don't worry about pitch. If you get the wrenches out of the engine, pitch corrects. I've seen it in everybody I've worked with for the last 10 years. Pitch corrects with balance. Balance just means getting the wrenches out of your engine, your vocal machine. Print, read, write, learn, map, sing, and improve. Those are your steps to bringing your personal naked worship time. Already talking about what we did in mapping last week and improving your confidence, and then actionably taking those things step by step into your personal practice time. That is where we grow the lamb. All right. If you want to know what your worship leader said about this topic, I've got that coming up. Just want you to know. And I want to thank Barbara Ann for one of my face group people before we had the new singers community. If you go to thevoiceclub.com, you'll find a link to our new singers community. I put extra training there. So be free to come by and ask me questions anytime you want. It's an app. You can put it on any device you want. But Barbara Ann said that maybe we should do a group class if enough people are interested. And we would just do at the end of June, maybe 4 weeks, 1 day a week. And we'll go through some really in-depth stuff, whatever you want to learn. And we'll go through as a group and learn individually stuff. So if you're interested in doing that, we do it like for $50 a person. If we have enough people interested, let me know in the comments and we will go ahead and get that together. If you're not interested, that's okay. I just saved the time. Okay. All right. What your worship leader said about this topic. I picked the 3 best comments because they all kind of intermingled a lot, but I thought these were a great encapsulation of what the worship singers said. They wish that we would sing like God is speaking through us. Sing your story, and God will sing through you because you're singing the story of what God did in you already. Check. A fresh understanding of what it is to lead worship. We talked about this in episode 1, and we'll talk about it some more in some continuing episodes. And we've got some episodes on teamwork where we're going to talk about the different roles, backup and lead and different responsibilities. And a lot of places it's not really clear what people should do. And I'll hopefully clear that up for you. What it is to lead worship is to bring our naked worship and pick a lamb in every song and know how to primp that lamb and make it its best, and then bring it successfully to the altar and get ourselves out of the way. That's what it is to lead worship. Other people watch that, just like other people were at the temple and they would watch other families and they're like, I don't have a lamb like that. Man, how do I get my lamb to look like that? It's kind of like my lawn, my neighbor's lawn. I'm like, how do I get my lawn to look like that? But way more important. This last comment I thought was the most beautiful comment. They said they wish that the bells and whistles, and I think they mean the stage, the lights, the loud music, people clapping and raising their hands. They wish the bells and whistles wouldn't distract us from presenting our testimony with skill. I thought that was a beautiful line. Thank you, Kirk, for that one. Presenting our offering, our testimony, our story with skill, which is confidence. Plus, we're going to talk about vocal stability, notes that are reliable, controlling vibrato, power, all of those things are coming up. And that's how we do presenting our testimony with skill. We do it by putting those things into action, not just so we have another list of things to do, but because those things will help us to know how to actionably raise our lamb. And every single song we sing is one of our lambs that we bring and offer to God on that platform. It's your turn. Remember, last episode is going to be you telling your worship leader what you wish they knew. There's a lot of things in every church I've been in that I wish my worship leader knew, and I don't want to use mine. I want to use yours. So please leave yours in the comments so that I can add it to the last episode. Next time we get together, it is going to be, vocal control. Vocal control is having notes that show up when you ask them to. We talked a little about that in confidence last week. And also vibrato, how to get one. If you have one, how to control it. Vibrato should do what you tell it to when you tell it to. That's a nice thing to say, but how do you do it? We'll talk about that next week. Thank you guys so much for attending. I love all you worship singers. I'm there with you. I can't wait to get back to church. And I hope your church is already getting back into service this weekend, because some of you are, some of us aren't. All right. We'll see you tomorrow, guys, at 11 a.m. Pacific time. Bye.